numbers in perfectly normal number space, but they are very expensive and they're built so that they actually fund money back to the person who's operating the number. And this means that these numbers will work from anywhere in the world and they will work from cell phones. So if you compare these numbers to the 1-900 numbers here in USA, well, you can call this from USA, you can call this from cell phones, and they will generate money to the person operating it. They do all the things that you cannot do with 1-900 numbers. And they will work from any country in the world. Any phone, anywhere in the world, will be able to call these numbers, and they will fund money back to the operator. And these are called illegal call terminations, also known as short stopping or long lining. And the basic idea is actually very simple. Let's, for example, assume that we want to make a phone call from here in Nevada to Somalia in Eastern Africa. And that would, I checked the minute price from AT&T or Sprint. It was $2.55 a minute when you make a call like that. So it's pretty expensive. But you can understand because Somalia is far away, it's a developing country, all that, you know. Now, the trick is, when you call one of these numbers, for example, the number that was listed right here, going to Somalia, it actually won't go to Somalia. The call gets disconnected, for example, in Florida, or Canada, or Australia, or the Netherlands. And they keep the rest of the money. And calling Florida from Nevada costs you a couple of cents, which means they get to keep over $2 a minute of extra. And this is what's known as short stopping or long lining. Illegal call terminations. They are terminating the call before it actually reaches the place. So when your phone, if it was infected by 3D anti-terrorist Trojan, when your phone was calling the South Pole, it actually didn't call the South Pole. But you paid for the call to South Pole, and someone else, the virus writer, got the money instead. So it's pretty neat. So how do you actually create a number like this? How do you create a number that uses these call terminations or short stopping? Well, you just go online and you search for this, and you'll find several operators that are selling numbers exactly like this. International premium rate numbers in Zaire, in Madagascar, in Cameroon, in Niger, and elsewhere. This is World Premium Telecom. They're selling numbers in Latvia, Belarus, Sierra Leone, Lithuania, Kosovo, Myanmar, Georgia, and that's Georgia, the country, not the state. Here's another one, selling numbers in, yes, Afghanistan, Albania, again, Antarctica. And these are all based on the same idea, that the calls are terminated before they reach the actual destination, and the money is funded back. And these provide daily payments or weekly payments. So you don't have to wait for 30 days. And the fraud checking that's being done by these guys, well, I don't really know, but I'm guessing it's not nearly as stringent as would be by a real phone operator. And there's no legislation. There's no FTC governance. It's really hard to actually figure out where these guys operate themselves. And if you just think about this, here's a list of one of these operators. They're selling, look at these. They are selling numbers in North goddamn Korea, right there. You can buy a North Korean number, plus 358 goes to North Korea, which of course never goes to North Korea, but can be used for exactly this. And now, I'm sure there is some logical, perfectly fine explanation why somebody would like to buy a number like this, and which would make sense and which wouldn't be illegal or fishy in any way. I'm sure there is an explanation, but I can't figure it out. I can't imagine a non-shady reason why somebody would like to have a phone number in North Korea and get extra money out of whenever somebody calls that number. If you can figure it out, you tell me. And these operators, like I said, these are fairly easy to find. Again, I'm sure there are logical reasons why they keep doing this and why this is not really being regulated. Some of them seem to be very touchy about this subject. I made a short blog post about these when I was researching background for this talk, mentioning a couple of these operators, and I immediately started getting threats from one of these operators. So they seem to be a bit touchy about the fact that if somebody starts looking into their operations. No, just nasty emails. That's what I got. Nobody was trying to beat me up, no. And there are a lot of problems, like if you have an international phone number like this, like for example the numbers used by the 3D anti-terrorist Trojan. I wasn't able to figure out who operated those numbers, like which of these companies was running those numbers. There's no way to do that, no way that I'm aware of. Which means there's nowhere you could actually complain. How do you get such a number shut down if you can't figure out who's the operator behind it? These are pretty nasty problems. Those numbers, those 8 numbers used by 3D anti-terrorist Trojan are now shut down. They don't work anymore. I don't know how and who did it, because we sure didn't do it. We tried shutting them down. We couldn't find any party where to report them. And of course, eventually, virus writers will realize that it is easier to make money by infecting phones than it is by infecting computers. Because you have this built-in billing mechanism on phones that you do not have in computers. And also, let's remember that there are more phones on this planet than computers. But of course, this hasn't happened yet. And my numbers on what the difference of the amount of malware today on Windows side and what amount of malware today on phone side is nicely illustrated by this figure showing the difference between the size of Sun and size of Earth. So there really is a world of difference right now. You're really not very likely today to get infected by a mobile phone attack. Not even the kind of stuff that the 3D anti-terrorist Trojan was done. Yes, there were global infections, but even then the number were probably in hundreds more than, or not, maybe in thousands, but not more than that. So the problem really isn't there. It could be, but it isn't.
I disagree. We saw such kind of attacks against asterisk systems and voice over IP customers and stuff like that. So we saw that kind of attacks.
They were done from, and those attacks that you mentioned were done from phones, using phone malware or something else?
It was kind of brute forcing against asterisk systems.
Sure.
Or they did actually hijack customer accounts, web accounts, and do calling via some proxies down in China.
Yes. So yes, there is tons of like traditional hacking going on, which uses premium rate numbers to get money out of it, including hacking voice over IP systems and asterisk systems and others. What I'm talking about here is the difference between PC malware and mobile malware, specifically using mobile malware to issue calls straight from the smartphone. And that difference is that big. 500 mobile malware, of which only a handful tries to do premium rate text messages or premium rate calls. So this problem doesn't exist yet. We only have a handful of examples. My theory on why the bad guys aren't doing more of this already is in the operating system market shares. Low-hanging fruit is Windows, and it is Windows XP. Most of the malware today is being written for Windows, specifically written for Windows XP, because Windows XP is 9 years old. Almost everybody's running it as administrator. It has, by far, the biggest market share. 62% of the computers on this planet are running Windows XP. 15% Vista, 12% Windows 7. That's the latest figures I could find. Which means, why on earth would the attackers even consider targeting any other platform right now than Windows XP, where they already have existing attacks, existing malware frameworks that work and bring great results. They're getting great money out of current attacks. They don't have to move anywhere. And they won't. Of course, eventually this will change. In 2 years, Windows XP will no longer be the most common operating system. It will be replaced by Windows 7. And of course, Windows 7, sure, can get infected, but it's harder. You know, there's a bigger barrier again. And it's perfectly possible when the current virus writer gangs realize that they have to start putting in more effort. They have to start porting their software from Windows XP to somewhere else, to Windows 7, or maybe some of them look around and realize that actually targeting phones might be a better idea. We'll see. But right now, I'm not really expecting a huge amount of rush from the current virus writers, from their current platforms to mobile, because it works so well for them already right now. Why would they move? Such an easy target. So what should you do to protect against attacks like these? To protect a scenario where your customers or your users are hit by a piece of malware and which uses their smartphones to issue calls to faraway places? Well, the usual: lock down the devices, prevent installations of third-party applications, set up policies, tell your users not to install games, especially not the 3D anti-terrorist game. And of course, then you can buy expensive security products on your device. For example, we have a solution for this, which we'd be happy to sell to you. But frankly, right now, most of our customers who buy security products for their smartphones aren't actually buying it to prevent mobile phone viruses. They're more looking into other features that security products provide, like anti-theft, online backup, remote lock, remote wipe, that kind of features, because that's something you need already today, while antivirus and mobile firewalls is something you would need more in the future. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I recommend all of you to follow me on Twitter. I have 7,500 followers. I'm 90 followers behind HD Moore, and I want to reach him. So please help me reach HD Moore. And that's what I had. Please, any questions? Yes? The question was about the smartphone operating systems and which one we see targeted by malware. The example I was giving was this 3D anti-terrorist Trojan and another version of the same Trojan, which was a poker game. We're targeting Windows Mobile. But if you look at the mobile malware by platform, it looks like this. 516 mobile phone attacks we've seen so far, majority by far targeting Symbian. Symbian, like for example my Nokia phone right here. Question, why Symbian? Because Symbian is the king of the hill. Symbian is the gorilla. They by far have the biggest market share of smartphone operating systems. They are 3 times ahead of BlackBerry or iPhone or Android or Windows Mobile. Of course, here in USA nobody runs Symbian, but you go anywhere else and it is by far the most common platform. So most of the attackers are writing for the biggest operating system. Yes, there are some attacks for others, but frankly, very little. So that's the distribution of malware today. We have seen, for example, the FlexiSpy remote spy program is available for BlackBerry. So it's not a virus or worm, but it's a spying tool that can be installed on a BlackBerry and then to be used to remotely listen on the phone call, see the location of the phone, turn on the microphone remotely and listen in what's being discussed. That would be a typical example of BlackBerry malware, but outside of that, there's very few examples. Yes?
Do you have a larger list of numbers which are used for such kind of fraud? Code numbers?
Not really. What we have seen, in addition of the 8 numbers I listed, the 3D poker art game, which was done by the same Russian hacker with exactly the same logic 2 weeks later, it had the same list of numbers, except it only used 7 numbers, so it had even smaller list of numbers. Then we've seen similar attacks with Java Trojans, which send text messages, but those have only been seen inside Russia. So the Trojans are in Russian language, they use Russian numbers which only work within Russia, so you don't have to worry about those outside of Russia. Those numbers, sure, I can provide that list to you, but that's only 8 numbers.
What about doing forging the caller ID using a VoIP type call? Is that a potential way to reap money in the same kind of method?
So forging the caller ID using voice over IP to get the user call back maybe or something like that, is that what you mean?
Establish the call, perhaps?
Right, well the problem is depends on how the billing is done. If you have a system where the receiver pays for the call, possibly, we haven't seen that. But what we have seen is that there are calls being placed from those very expensive numbers and